Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. We've been discussing about the etiquettes, adab al-du'a. The Prophet ﷺ has taught us how to supplicate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these adab compiled by Allama al-Jazari al-Muhaddith rahimahullah. Some of these adab etiquettes are not just etiquettes, they are preconditions of du'a. Some of them are obligatory part and parcel of du'a. Some are just mere adab which enhances your du'a. We talked about the first one was abstaining from unlawful eating, drinking, unlawful dressing, and unlawful earning. The second one, Allama al-Jazari rahimahullah, he brought was ikhlas, sincerity in your dua, that only Allah is the one who fulfills your dua, nobody else. And when you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have conviction, yaqeen, certainty that Allah is going to accept your dua. The third was you perform a pious deed before taqdeem wa amalin salih. You perform a righteous deed before you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you mention tawassul bi amalin salih, that you use the coupon of a righteous action in times of hardship and need. And then number four is to keep oneself clean and pure, right? In the state of evolution and wudu. And this is what our topic today is, that when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to look at how are we looking like. Are we presentable? You would never go to an interview for a job dressed up in your sleeping PJs. Would you? Do you think you will get hired? Why there's so much emphasis on your hairstyle, your tie, your dress shirt, and your shoes, and the socks that also supposed to be matching the shoes and the rest of the attire? You know that about, right? Socks cannot be ignored. Yeah, the interviewer, they watches each and everything, whether you're dressed up for occasion or not. This is all factored in. So how are you presenting yourself when you are requesting something? We do that in our daily life as well. You know, when somebody is invited for a high-scale delegation, you don't just walk up to that event, whatever you want to dress up like. And we see this in our society as well, that politicians, when they dress up, or the president, when they dress up a little bit differently, they get criticized and scrutinized by the media and the public as well, because there is a certain decorum and expectation. Similarly, the Prophet ﷺ taught us that when we are beseeching Allah and asking and begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to present ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a presentable manner. Yes, Allah is our creator, and He accepts and He hears and He sees everything. Yet, to make sure that our request is premium request, it has a higher value in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has a higher appeal towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He loves to accept that appeal, we need to present ourselves in a presentable manner. Therefore, we need to be in a purification state, in purified state. We need to be in the form of ghusl, or in the form of at least wudu. We need to have purified and pure clothes, right? We should perform wudu before we asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything. And this combines with taqdeem amal and salih, which we discussed last time, that you supersede a righteous action. Wudu is a righteous action as well. It's an act of ibadah. So you're performing an extra act of ibadah. If you want to go a little bit higher and take your dua to another higher, you do tahiyatul wudu, which we were just discussing earlier today. So you perform wudu, you perform extra layer of 2 rak'ah nafil salah, which is tahiyatul wudu. That's a nafil prayer. And now you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever your needs are, right? So all of these are from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the sixth category that Allama al-Jazari brings is to face the direction of Qibla. So wherever you are, when you combine all of these things, these layers and these categories, one on top of another, your dua is becoming very, very weighty in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. The Qibla is not just the Qibla for us in the Salah. Qibla has many different usage, right? And if you look at the Sharia, there are things in which, like in the dua, the Prophet ﷺ emphasized The narrations are mentioned in the four books in Sahih ibn Hibban, Hakim, narrated by Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that when we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for dua, our face should be, is encouraged, face is towards the Qibla. The opposite is also true. There are certain things in the Sharia where we are not supposed to be facing the Qibla. Does anybody know? When we are relieving ourselves, right? The Prophet ﷺ actually mentioned that when you are relieving, you're answering to the call of nature. When you are in the bathroom toilet and you are relieving yourself, answering to the call of nature, you should neither face towards the Qibla nor you should show your back towards the Qibla. Now, the fuqaha, the jurists, they have difference of opinion whether this is something that is obligatory or that is something that is discouraged. Like Sayyidina Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the host of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina, he's the one who narrates this hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that neither face towards the Qibla nor show your back towards the Qibla. Then he went to Syria long after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, and the Syria opened up, Sham opened up to the believers, and they found that Romans had built public toilets. So they're already pre-made, built, right? And when they started, the Sahaba, the companions, they started using these public toilets, they were faced in the direction of the Kaaba. And Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu ta'ala mentions that we, not I, we tried to turn our faces when we would use those toilets. We would try to, change our direction away from the Qibla, and then afterwards we would seek istighfar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because there was no other option, right? They were public toilets, so they had a need to answer, so they would use them. And that's where the a side note, like, you learn the fiqh theory, and then there's a fiqh practicality. So Abu Ayyub Ansari radiallahu ta'ala teaches us that, something, what the Prophet ﷺ has taught us, but in real life scenario, you may not be able to go by the letter of the book. So you have to navigate, and because of the situation, you cannot go completely by the book. So you seek istighfar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and your life keeps on moving forward, right? So when coming back to our dua topic, we should internalize these different avenues. Wudu, tahara, have a clean space, maybe a musalla in our house, a dedicated area where we often pray. It's a clean area, pure area, right? Where we have khushu and khudu, concentration towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we have performed wudu and we're facing towards the qibla. And now we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what we need. Taqdeem amal salih, we have done wudu, we have prayed extra. We're building layers upon layers to ensure that this dua becomes so solid that we are not giving any excuse to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to accept. And then we have ikhlas, complete certainty that after making sure I have done all that I have could, Allah will definitely accept my dua. With that kind of dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will inshallah definitely accept. If not in this life, then we will see the reward of it and the acceptance in the hereafter when we desperately need the most. So, dear brothers and sisters, the whole idea of this discussion of this topic, this chapter, is that how we can turn our du'as into powerful medium through which we communicate with our Creator. May Allah make us among those who learn from the Prophet ﷺ the art of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The art of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ قَوْلِي هَذَا أَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ وَلِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. Yes.